Thank you. Afternoon, everyone, Chief Justice. We have a hybrid media briefing again. We've got ENCA in the room, and there are a number of reporters from various media houses joining us online. I hope they'll be able to show them at some point. Colleagues, this is a media briefing by the Chief Justice and the Judges Organizing Committee on the outcomes of the conference that has taken place over the past 3 days. We'll allow the Chief Justice to give a briefing, and thereafter we'll take questions. Thank you, Chief Justice.
Good afternoon, members of the media. The conference that started on Tuesday, well, we had a gala dinner on Monday evening, but the actual conference started on Tuesday, has ended. It's been a great success, and we have identified a number of matters at conference that need attention. I won't go into all of them, but will mention just some. There was a decision that the issue of the institutional independence of the judiciary should be expedited. The conference noted that for a period of about 10 years after the judiciary had given the executive their proposals on the model they prefer as the model of court administration, the executive for about 10 years did not respond. And that has impeded our attempts to get full independence, institutional independence. Fortunately, there are attempts that are being made now for a meeting between the judiciary and the executive. The president had asked for a meeting with me to have a preliminary discussion on this issue for the 29th of November, but that day the meeting was postponed at their request, but his office has contacted my office again, I think it was yesterday, and arrangements have been made for that meeting to be next week on Wednesday. So I think that it's very important that that meeting is going to happen before the end of the year, because I have no doubt that if the executive had given this matter proper attention and responded the way they should have responded, we would long have finalized the issue of a court administration model. And conference felt that this matter must be given urgent attention, and I'm hoping that the matter will not drag on for too long before there is finality on it. There was also a discussion about an issue also on which the executive has delayed the judiciary. As you know, there is the Office of the Chief Justice, which provides support to the judiciary and deals with administration. That office is supposed to also deal with the lower judiciary, the magistrates. But the executive seems not to be keen on allowing magistrates to be moved from the Department of Justice to be under the office of the Chief Justice. This is a matter that was discussed with the executive by my predecessor, Chief Justice Mogoeng. And there seems to be just unwillingness on the part of the executive to let go. So conference felt very strongly that this needs to be given urgent attention so that the judiciary can all be under the office of the Chief Justice. And that speaks to the issue of a single judiciary, something that the executive is supposed to embrace, as far as I know, not just from now, from a long time ago. There was also a feeling that we as the judiciary must be alive to the fact that there are concerns in the public that complaints against judges take long to be finalized, and that we need to do what needs to be done to make sure that complaints against judges are dealt with expeditiously. Now, a lot of people have previously complained that complaints against judges take too long, in a way which suggested that they thought that judges were the ones who were causing delays, or the judiciary was the one that was causing delays. I know this because my predecessor said on many occasions, explained to the public, that when, for example, a judge has a complaint that has been lodged against him or her, and he or she decides to challenge some decision connected with that complaint in the courts on review, and there are appeals, that there is nothing that the judiciary can do about that. But when these complaints or this criticism is raised, one gets the impression that people are thinking that the judiciary is delaying the finalization of complaints because it's complaints against their own colleagues. But there is absolutely no merit in any suggestion along those lines. Any delays that might happen have got absolutely nothing to do with that. Actually, anyone who observes how the judiciary deals with complaints against members of the judiciary will have realized that those who deal with complaints against their colleagues deal with them in the same way they would deal with any other matters. We have a number of judgments that have been handed down or that have been issued by the Judicial Conduct Committee against judges. And when you read those judgments, anyone who cares to read those judgments will see that the manner in which judges deal with other judges in relation to complaints is very firm. Take any judgments and read them. So people, when they want to insinuate that judges, so to speak, are soft on their colleagues, they must do so after reading those judgments. So, but apart from that, there are some delays that happen in the complaints, in the processing of complaints against judges, but they arise largely from the fact that in terms of the Judicial Service Commission Act, the composition of the Judicial Conduct Committee is problematic in the sense that the number of members that are allowed is very small. It's about, I think, between 5 and 7 people. And you're talking about 250 or so judges. And, and those between 5 and 7 people, they do this work mostly in addition to the caseload that they carry in their own courts. They don't sit and do Judicial Conduct Committee cases only. They've got their day job. They are members of the Supreme Court of Appeal. They are judges of the High Court. On top of their own load, they've got to do this. And maybe I should make it clear that judges in active service, when they do this work, they don't get paid separately. And I think I must say that because when I was in the commission, there were some who were thinking that I was being paid 2 checks. So it's additional work. But of course, we include the retired judges to be part of the Judicial Conduct Committee, where we can get them. But I must also say that we mustn't take for granted the availability of retired judges, because many of them are busy with arbitrations and other things. So those that we can get, we'll get, and we will try going forward to use more retired judges. And this is something that we have already started to use more retired judges, but that is based on their availability. But we are going to have to ask that the Judicial Service Commission Act be amended so as to allow the Judicial Conduct Committee to have many members, so that complaints can be dealt with by many people. In that way, the burden of doing JCC cases will be shared among many. And in that way also, they will be dealt with more expeditiously. So that is about judicial conduct work. There was also a discussion concerning reserved judgments. Judges are concerned about situations where there are reserved judgments for long periods. But it has been emphasized that very often the delays in handing down judgments arises from a very heavy workload that judges are carrying. Obviously, some manage more than others, but the conference acknowledges that it's very important that judgments be handed down without any undue delay, but that where there are delays, it's important that the situation be looked at properly, because sometimes the problem is simply that there is too much work for judges. I'm going to stop there and allow other members of the committee, if they want to talk to other decisions. Judge President Lambo is the chairperson of the organizing committee. He might wish to talk to some of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I think one other issue that conference discussed was the rising workload of judges and magistrates. That it is one of the reasons that cases take a long time to be finalized through the judicial process. Conference noted that and urged judicial leadership to expedite pending initiatives like the Museneke Committee that will look at judicial establishments with a view to adding judicial capacity. But conference also noted the importance of alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, including mediation, which could help in terms of decongesting court rolls. And conference urged judicial leadership to find ways of introducing these alternative ways of dealing with disputes in the courts. Conference appreciated input from a judge from Namibia who came to speak to us about information technology in the courts. Namibia has a fully digitized high court. And there were lessons that were shared with us, which will also help us in terms of dealing with our work expeditiously. Let me also stop there. Conference noted a number of other things, but I just thought let me mention those two. Thank you very much, Chief Justice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Thank you, Judge.
One second. Oh. Justice Matopo, do you want to add anything? Okay.
Thank you. Colleagues, we'll open the floor for questions. We're just going to request that you prepare one question, please, and that you keep your questions brief. We'll start in the room with ENCA, and then we'll go to our colleagues online. We'll take a round of 3 questions at a time. Please go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm disorganizing you. Just before they start, let me give the acting judge president of the Land Claims Court to add something.
Just to add that conference noted the need for the appointment of more judges and for the capacitation of judges with adequate resources to enable us to do our work efficiently and expeditiously.
Thank you. I'm representing the District Court Judiciary. I'm the Chief Magistrate. In the district courts, we used to deal only with your civil, your criminal, and your family was only your maintenance. But there has been pieces of legislation that were enacted, and there has not been the improvement on the establishment. So appointment of more magistrates will come in handy.
I do want to emphasize the point that Judge Mia made. There are lots of complaints about inadequate courtrooms and cases where more judges should be appointed, but the posts have not been advertised, and it's a matter that has been raised with the government because that affects the cases that need to be done if there are too few judges or judicial officers. And this problem exists both in the superior courts and in the magistrates' courts. And of course, there is also a serious problem about infrastructure that is falling apart in various courts. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. We'll go to the questions again. Colleagues, one question per individual and try and keep them brief. Thank you. We'll start in the room with ENCA.
Thank you. Aviwem Mtila from ENCA. Chief Justice, there's the impeachment matter that's happening, where for the first time we could see a judge impeached. One of those judges was at ENCA yesterday, the Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe, and he suggested that for the first time ever, if he does get impeached, he'll be the first judge to be impeached for comments or remarks, essentially saying that a lot of judges, even according to Justice Jafta, were commenting on former President Zuma and the matter that was happening. So just wanted to get maybe your comments. Does that comment have merit, given that he was, of course, found guilty by the JSC for misconduct for attempting to influence Concord judges? So does those comments that he made yesterday have merit? He also seemed to suggest that there are parallel processes playing out at the moment, one happening in Parliament, the other with his appeal at the Supreme Court of Appeal against the parliamentary process. So maybe also your comments on that.
Thank you. We'll take Mbegezeli Benjamin, then Karen Mon, and then we'll give the judges a chance to answer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice, and thank you for the presentation. A quick one is, you mentioned that you encouraged us to read all of the judgments of the Judicial Conduct Committee. May I ask whether we will get an undertaking that all of them will be released and published online?
Thank you. Karen Mon.
Sorry, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I'm in an Uber. My question is just, you've emphasized throughout this presentation the need for capacitation and for, that there's this incredible workload on the courts. But today we saw Freedom Under Law launching litigation against the JSC precisely because in the circumstance of the SCA appointments, they argue capable candidates were not put into the position and 2 vacancies were left available. In light of everything that you're saying, in light of the desperate need of courts for competent people, what is the JSC's, I don't want you to preempt your response in litigation, but how important is this kind of issue of JSC processes in the appointment and the reasons for not appointing people to positions or vacancies that are open? How important is that litigation going to be to the very capacitation constraints that you're talking about? Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Justice.
I can't comment on comments that may have been made by Judge President Hlophe on TV yesterday because I don't know the context. I haven't seen him. I haven't watched TV from Tuesday or from Monday afternoon. We have been very busy. So I don't know what the comments are, but the position, of course, is that there is a process that is in Parliament relating to our 2 colleagues. And obviously, if they wish to take whatever steps, it's up to them. If they wish to pursue appeals, it's up to them. But as far as the process is concerned, it's gone beyond the JSC, it is in Parliament. There was a full inquiry where all sides got an opportunity to put their case in the tribunal. The tribunal made whatever findings it made. The JSC accepted those findings. So there's not much I can say about it. The fact is there is a process, and if any one of our colleagues involved wishes to pursue any legal action, they know their rights. As far as what Mbegezeli's question is concerned, I'm under the impression that those judgments of the JCC become available online. If they are not online, I'm sure that can be sorted out, Mbegezeli. And then Karin referred to proceedings that have been launched by Freedom Under Law. I haven't seen the papers, number one. Number two, I am aware that they had indicated that they would take the matter relating to the JSC failing to advise the president to appoint 4 judges for the Supreme Court of Appeal to court. The JSC gave reasons for its decision. I don't want to say anything further until at least I've seen the papers filed by Freedom Under Law, but the JSC gave quite a detailed response to CASAC about its reasons and how it went about making the decision that it made. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief Justice. There's a question on the chat from one of the media people online. It says, Chief Justice, what exactly is your understanding of the reason for the non-responsiveness of the executive to the need to discuss governance of the judiciary? 10 years is a long time to be simply ignored. What has the judiciary previously done about getting the attention of the executive? That's one question. We'll take 2 more, and that will make it the second round of 3 questions. I'll go to Diane Hawker, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Chief Justice, and to the other panelists. My question relates to the resource issues that have been raised, it seems like over and over again. The judiciary seems to be still waiting on the executive to make some decisions, legislative changes, but in the meantime, citizens who have to deal with magistrates' courts, and even in some instances, high courts, labor courts, are met with all kind of a lopsided resource situation. And if you go to some courts, you know, it's really a mess, to be quite honest with you. And we attend these courts as journalists in various places. If the executive delays for another 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, what will or can the judiciary do to improve access to justice for ordinary citizens? You know, considering that you've already had to wait 10 years to get a meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Ray Hartle, I just want to ask, do you have a different question from the one you've posted on the chat?
Yes, I do.
Please go ahead.
Hello, Chief Justice, and to your colleagues. Do you think that there is a need for a new policy to separate out and reallocate the roles of Chief Justice and Chairperson of the JSC to different individuals, rather than have one person perform that role? I ask this because in an interview with Newsroom Africa last month, you said that you had spoken with Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge about the complaint against him, and that you plan to speak with him again. I understand that your role as Chief Justice requires that sort of engagement with a judge facing a serious complaint. However, when this matter is heard by the JSC, which you chair, You sit there then as someone who has already dealt with it informally and outside of the established JSC processes. So I'm just interested to know if that is something which occurs to you as almost, I can understand it's a complex situation, but almost as a policy issue that maybe needs to be revisited. Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat? I'm struggling to hear him.
I'm
Please
so
repeat.
sorry.
I'm sorry if you can, I'm struggling to hear you. I don't know if you can give it a try again to understand your question.
Okay, is this better? Can you hear me now?
It is better.
Okay, so my question relates to whether we need or you need a new policy to separate out and reallocate the roles of Chief Justice and Chairperson of the JSC to different individuals rather than have both sets of roles encompassed by one individual. And I ask this because in your interview with Newsroom Africa last month, you said that you had spoken with Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge about the complaint against him and that you plan to speak with him again. And now I understand that your role as Chief Justice requires that sort of engagement with a judge facing a very serious complaint. However, when this matter is then heard by the JSC, which you chair again, you sit there as someone who has already dealt with this matter informally and outside of the established JSC processes. So really my question relates to a potential conflict in the roles and responsibilities of the Chief Justice as, let's call it, first among equals of all the judges, and the chair of the JSC, which is a very specific role.
Thank you. Chief Justice, there's one more hand up, but I don't know if you'll allow me or
let's deal with this.
three. Thank you.
Actually, next time I think we must deal with one at a time. Okay. There is one that you read there. Is it still there? Let's start with it. Or is it no longer there?
It should still be there.
Okay, while they are trying, let me answer with the ones that I can. Let me start with the last one. Let me start with the last one. You will read it to me because I can't read it from here. Let me start with the last one. No, I don't think there is a need to have some of the work that is done by the Chief Justice split into two so that somebody else does the other tasks. The matter relating to the judge president you referred to was raised in the JSC, a small JSC, and I informed the JSC of what had transpired in my interactions with the judge president, concerned Judge President Mbenenge. And I think that the fact that I was the same person helped because then I could tell them what had happened, and then the JSC could decide what it wants to do. So I think that there is no problem at all in relation to the Chief Justice playing both those roles. And then there was the question about what the judiciary will do when the executive doesn't come to the party effectively. The fact of the matter is that the judiciary has got to get money from the executive. And if money is not made available to the judiciary so that certain matters that need to be addressed can be addressed, there is very little that the judiciary can do. But what the public must ask is to ask the executive, because the public knows that the judiciary doesn't keep the purse. They must ask the executive, why are you not creating posts for judges in courts that you have been told about? Why are you not building more courtrooms? In other countries, enough money is given to the judiciary, which has got institutional independence, where it is the judges who decide we need more courtrooms, and they've got money because it's with them. They can put money aside and make sure that courtrooms are built. But that is not the position in South Africa. And that's part of the reason why we insist that there should be full institutional independence for the judiciary in South Africa, so that we can handle certain matters ourselves that are presently handled by the executive. Very often we've got to go to the executive and say, we need this, we need this. It's like we must go to them and beg. So we need to have full institutional independence, so that when you or the public complains about certain courts not being in the right condition, or there not being enough courtrooms, at least we can answer. But when we don't have the purse and we have got to ask the executive, there is nothing we can do if the executive doesn't give us, except that, as we have seen, in some countries, there comes a time when members of the public resort to litigation against government, to force government to make resources available to the judiciary, so that the judiciary can do its job properly. And about the fact that the executive kept us for 10 years, waiting for 10 years. Again, short of litigation, what could the judiciary do if the executive had been given our proposals and they decided that they were not going to respond for 10 years? Short of litigation, I don't think there is much that the judiciary could do. So the judiciary puts pressure and talks to them, but in the end, if they decide that they are not going to respond, that is just that. We need the public to be aware of these things and to know that when we talk about institutional independence and a judicial-led court administration model, we don't just need it for ourselves. We need it in order to serve the public better. It is for the public, it's not for us. But we want to be able to serve the public better. And that is also one of the sentiments that have been stressed in the conference, that we continue to emphasize that we are servants of the public, and we want to serve the public, but we need resources in order to serve the public better. Have you been able to refresh your memory on that question?
I think you've just addressed it, but I'll read it again, Chief Justice. It says, what exactly is your understanding of the reason for the non-responsiveness of the executive to the need to discuss governance of the judiciary? 10 years is a long time to be simply ignored. What has the judiciary previously done about getting the attention of the executive?
Oh, well, the judiciary tried to put pressure, but in the end, as I say, short of litigation, you can't force the executive to give you what they don't want to give you. Maybe during that time they didn't want to. Maybe things are changing, but it was simply unacceptable that for something as important as the independence of the judiciary was made to wait for so long.
Thank you, Chief Justice. We'll take the last round of questions. We'll start with Begazeli Benjamin.
Thank you. This question is about the judiciary and technology, and I'm going to address it specifically to Judge President Mlambo. JP, did the conference get an update on the status of the rollout of the case line system and the court online system, and particularly an update on what has happened regarding the contract? Because for up to this point, the OCJ or the judiciary as an institution hasn't spoken to the public about what's happening there. All the public has known is the media reports and about what is happening, including the officials who are currently discuss that and what was the resolution, and will all the resolutions be made public?
Thank you. JP?
Oh, thank you for that question, Mr. Benjamin. Yes, a report was provided to conference about the status of the rollout. The rollout in Gauteng, Pretoria and Johannesburg is complete, and it will commence in the first term to prioritize the Supreme Court of Appeal and the Constitutional Court, predominantly for the reason that appeals going to those courts emanate from Gauteng, and because those matters are already online, they will be dealt with by those courts online. So they are going to be ready. I mean, the staff and the justices of the Supreme Court of Appeal have already been preloaded onto the court online system. And at the beginning of the month, next month, engagements will happen with the officials in terms of necessary training. They have been trained in the past, but in terms of them being refreshed, as well as training for the justices, which will commence, which will not be that much in the sense that Court Online is more of a litigation platform for lawyers, litigants, and court staff. Case Lines is embedded in Court Online, and the training will focus more on refreshing justices of the Supreme Court of Appeal with case lines, but that will be a twin process because it will also involve the preloading of the justices and staff of the Constitutional Court onto the system, as well as to train them. So the aspirational thinking is that by the end of next term, the next quarter, or quarter one, the system will have been fully rolled out to those two appellate courts. And then other courts are in the pipeline in terms of the other quarters of the year till the end of the year. So there is a rollout plan. The litigation around the digital system, we had to wait for a court to grant us Part A. That is to allow us to implement and continue whilst we wait for Part B, where the court will decide whether the contract is legit or not. So that's where we are in terms of rolling out the system. At the appropriate time, the resolutions identified at conference will be made public at the appropriate time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, JP. It looks like our final question will come from Karen Mon. Please go ahead.
Hi. CJ, you mentioned that at one point, you said outside of litigation, the judiciary did not have the power potentially to enforce this demand for administrative independence, which you've made clear is essentially about you having your own budget and being able to manage your own budget and then deal with things like broken down courts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But are you really, would the judiciary then be in a position to litigate? Because the obvious criticism of that would be, well, you're going to ask judges to rule on a matter that involves judges, where the executive, at a point where the independence of the judiciary is under so much attack with misinformation, fake reports, etc., and there's a political motive to keeping the judiciary within the purse strings of government. Is it going to really come down to another case where an NGO then has to litigate to get you what you need to be independent in order to serve the South African public? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you. Well, when the judiciary controls the budget and so on, basically, it might not necessarily mean that it must be a judge who fills in certain forms and so on. It just means that it might mean that judges, there will be people who are dedicated to the judiciary, who will deal with those matters on behalf of the judiciary. For example, the accounting officer who might have to go and account in Parliament need not be a judge. So, but in terms of forcing the executive, I hope that we don't reach a point where that may have to happen. As I indicated, the president has indicated that he would like to meet with me, and we have a meeting scheduled for next week on the institutional independence of the judiciary. There was a meeting that was arranged even prior to the conference, which should have happened. So it may well be that the discussions are going to be such that things will move faster this time, and that they will move in the right direction. From our side as the judiciary, we will play our role to making sure that those discussions move fast and that they move in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the media briefing. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, judges, for your time. See you next time. Goodbye.